Pass through as does the vanishing lightning, and don't worry. We all pile in the two different cars, Donald driving in front, and go off to the poetry reading, which I'm not going to enjoy or in fact bear. I've already got it in my mind, wine and all. To sneak out to a bar and meet everybody later. Who is this Merrill Randall? I ask. The poet who'll read his work. He's a thin, elegant guy with horn-rimmed glasses and nice ties that you met in New York in the Remo. But you don't remember, says Irwin. One of the Hartsjohn crowd. The high teacups. It might be interesting to hear him converse spontaneously, but I will not sit through his crafty productions on a typewriter dedicated as they are usually to the imitation of the best poetry hitherto written, or at least the approximation. I'd rather hear Raphael's new bombs of words. In fact, I'd rather hear Lazarus write a poem. Rose is slowly, anxiously wheeling her car to downtown San Francisco traffic. I can't help thinking if old Cody was driving, we'd be there and back by now. Funny how Cody never comes to poetry readings or any of these formalities. He only came once to honor Irwin's first reading, and when Irwin had finished howling the last poem and there was a dead silence in the hall, it was Cody, dressed in his Sunday suit, who stepped up and offered his hand to the poet, his buddy Irwin, with whom he'd hitchhiked through the Texases and apocalypses of 1947. I always remember that as a typical, humble, beautiful act of friendship and good taste. Touching knees in the car and all upside down, we all crane around as Rose strives to park in her slot slowly. Okay, a little more, cut your wheel. And she sighs. Well, that's that, I feel like saying. Oh, Rosie, why don't you just stay home and eat chocolate bars and read Boswell? All this societyizing will bring you nothing but lines of anxiety in your face. And a sociable smile is nothing but teeth. But the hall of the reading is crowded with early arrivers, and there's the ticket girl and programs, and we sit around talking, and finally, Irwin and I cut out to buy a fifth of Sauterne to loosen tongues. It's actually charming. Donald is there alone now, the girl is gone, and he speaks fluid little charming jokes. Lazarus stands in the background. I squat with the bottle. Rose has driven us and her work is done. She goes and sits down. She has been the mother driving the vehicle machine to heaven with all her little children who wouldn't believe that the house was on fire. All that interests me is that there's going to be a party in a big house afterwards with a punch bowl, but now in walks David D'Angeli, gliding like an Arab, grinning with a beautiful French girl called Yvette on his arm, and oh my, he's like some elegant hero of Proust, the priest. If Cody is the preacher, David is the priest, but he's always got some beautiful chick in chow. In fact, I'm certain of the fact that the only thing may prevent David from taking his vow in the Catholic orders is he might want to get married, been married once already, again, and raise children. Of all of us, David is the most beautiful man. He has perfect features, like Tyrone Power, yet more subtle and esoteric. And that accent he talks in, I do not know where he picked it up. It's like a Moor educated at Oxford, something distinctly Arabic or Aramaean about David, or Carthaginian like Augustine. Though he's the son of a now dead, well-to-do Italian wholesaler, and his mother lives in a beautiful apartment with expensive mahogany furniture and silver and cellar full of Italian ham and cheese and wines. Homemade, David is like a saint. He looks like a saint. He is that fascinating kind of figure who begins his youth as an evil seeker. Try some of these pills, he'd say the first time Cody met him. It'll really give you the final kick, so that Cody never dared take them. There was David that night, lying elegantly on a white fur cover on a bed with a black cat, reading the Egyptian Book of the Dead and passing joints around, talking strangely. But how marvelous, really, he'd say then. But since that time, quote, the angel knocked him off the chair, end of quote, he saw a vision of the books of the fathers of the church. All of them in an instant, and he was commanded to return to the Catholic faith of his birth. So instead of growing up an elegant and slightly effete hipster poet, now suddenly he's a dazzling St. Augustine figure of past evils dedicated to the vision of the cross. Next month, he's going into a Trappist monastery for a spell and a tryout. At home, he plays Gabrielli full blast before going to communion. He is kind, just brilliant, eager to explain, won't take no for an answer. Your Buddhism is nothing but the vestiges of Manichaeism, Jack. Face it. After all, you've been baptized and there's no question, you see. Yet now he comes gliding into the poetry reading, completely urbane. There's been gossip that he's decided to cease proselytizing and has entered upon the stage of urbane regularity, silence on the subject. Perfectly natural to have that gorgeous Yvette on his arm and him all dolled to perfection in a simple suit and simple tie and a new crew cut that gives his sweet face a new virile look. Though his face in a year has changed from boyish sweetness to manly sweetness and gravity. You look more virile this year, is the first thing I say. What do you mean virile, he cries, stamping his foot and laughing. The way he sweeps right up on Arab glides and presents you his limp, white, earnest, gentle hand. But as he talks and at all stages in his development, all I can do is laugh. He really is very funny. He keeps his smile going beyond the bounds of reason, and you realize his smile is a subtle joke, a big joke that he expects you to realize anyway, and he goes on shining white madness in that mask till all you can do then is hear his inner words that he's not speaking at all, undoubtedly funny words, and it's too much. What are you laughing at, Jack? He calls out. He pronounces his ahs broad. It's a distinctly flavored accent made up of, apparently, American, Italian, second generation, but with strong Britishified overlays upon his Mediterranean elegance, which creates an excellent and strange new form of English I've never heard anywhere. Charity David, Civility David, who'd worn at my urging my poncho capuchin rain cape at my shack and gone out in it to meditate under the trees at night and had prayed on his knees probably, and come back to the lamplit shack where I'm reading Maneki and sutras and removed the cape only after letting me see how he did look in it. And he looked like a monk, David, who'd taken me to church on Sunday morning, and after communion, here he comes down the aisle with the host melting underneath his tongue, eyes piously yet somehow humorously, or at least engagingly lowered, hands clasped, for all the ladies to see, the perfect image of a priest, everybody constantly telling him, David, write the confession of your life like St. Augustine, which amuses him. But everybody, he laughs. But that's because they all know he's a tremendous hepcat who's been through hell and's headed now for heaven, which has no earthly use. And everybody really senses that he knows something that's been forgotten and that's been excluded from the experience of St. Augustine or of Francis of Loyola or the others. Now he shakes my hand, introduces me to blue-eyed perfect beauty Yvette, and squats with me for a slug of sauterne. What are you doing now? He laughs. Will you be at the party later? Good, I'm cutting out and going to a bar. Well, don't get drunk, he laughs. He always laughs. In fact, when he and Erwin get together, it's just one giggle after another. They exchange esoteric mysteries under the common Byzantium dome of their empty heads. Mosaic tile by mosaic tile, the atoms are empty. The tables are empty. Everybody's gone over, I sing to Sinatra's You're Learning the Blues. Oh, that empty business, laughs David. Really, Jack, I expect you to make a better show of what you really do know than all these Buddhist negatives. Oh, I'm not a Buddhist anymore. I'm not anything anymore, I yell, and he laughs and slaps me gently. He'd told me before, you've been baptized. The mystery of the water has touched you. Thank God for that. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened to you. It's David's theory or belief that Christ crashed through from heaven to bring us deliverance. And the simple rules laid down by St. Paul are as good as gold. Inasmuch as they are all born of the Christ epic, the Son sent by the Father to open our eyes by the supreme sacrifice of giving his life. But when I tell him Buddha didn't have to die in blood, but just sat in peaceful ecstasy under the tree of eternity. But Jack, that's not outside the natural order. All events except the event of Christ are in the natural order, subordinate to the commandment of the supernatural order. How often, in fact, I'd feared to meet David. He really dented my brain with his enthusiastic, passionate, and brilliant expositions of the universal orthodoxy. He'd been to Mexico and prowled among cathedrals and made close friends with monks and monasteries. David, also a poet, a strange, refined poet. Some of his earlier pre-conversion, pre-re poems had been weird, peyotal visions and such, and more than I ever saw. But I had never succeeded in bringing David and Cody together for a big, long talk about Christ. But now the reading is getting underway. There's Merrill Randall, the poet, arranging his manuscripts at the front desk, so after we kill the fifth in the toilet, I whisper to Erwin that I'm cutting out to a bar, and Simon whispers, and I'm coming with you. And Erwin really wants to come too, but he has to stay and make a show of poetic interest. As for Raphael, he's seated and ready to listen, saying, I know it will be nowhere, but it's the unexpected pottery I want to hear. That little cat. So Simon and I hurry out just as Randall's begun his first line. Quote, The duodenal abyss that brings me to the margin, consuming my flesh, end of quote. And such, some line that I hear and don't want to hear more, because in it I hear the craft of his carefully arranged thoughts and not the uncontrollable involuntary thoughts themselves. Dig. Although myself in those days I wouldn't have the nerve to stand up there and read even the Diamond Sutra. Simon and I miraculously find a bar where two girls are sitting at a table waiting to be picked up, and in the middle of the room is a kid singing and playing jazz on the piano, and at the bar 30 men milling over beers. We immediately sit with the girls after a little come on, but I see right away they don't approve of either Simon or myself, and besides, it's the jazz they want to hear. Not their complaints, at least jazz is new. Well, and besides, it's the jazz I want to hear, not their complaints, at least jazz is new. And I go over and stand at the piano. The kid I'd seen before on television in Frisco, tremendously naive and excited with a guitar, yelling and singing, dancing, but now he's quieted down and is trying to make a living as a cocktail pianist. I'm going to read it all again. I was really struck by how quick that description is. And I was just reading Dostoevsky yesterday, and I just love how quick. Like Kerouac really wants to give you the feeling of going into a bar and sizing the place up within, 5 seconds. Simon and I miraculously find a bar where two girls are sitting at a table waiting to be picked up. And in the middle of the room is a kid singing and playing jazz on the piano. And at the bar, 30 men milling over beers. We immediately sit with the girls after a little come on, but I see right away they don't approve of either Simon or myself. And besides, it's the jazz I want to hear, not their complaints. At least jazz is new. And I go over and stand at the piano, the kid I'd seen before on television in Frisco, tremendously naive and excited with a guitar, yelling and singing, dancing, but now he's quieted down and trying to make a living as a cocktail pianist. On TV, he'd reminded me of Cody, a younger musical Cody, in his old Midnight Ghost guitar. Chug, chug-a-lug, chug, chug, chug-a-lug. I'd heard that old road poetry, and in his face I'd seen belief and love. Now he looks as if the city's finally brought him down, and he idly picks on a few tunes. Finally, I start singing a little, and he starts playing The Thrill Is Gone and asks me to sing it formally, which I do. Not loud and loose, imitating to a certain extent the style of June Christie, which is the coming man style in jazz singing. The slur, the loose don't care slides, the pathetic Hollywood Boulevard loneliness. Meanwhile, Simon won't give up and keeps jazzing at the girls. Let's all go to my place. Time flies as we enjoy, and suddenly in comes Irwin. Everywhere he appears with those big staring eyes like a ghost. Somehow he knew we'd come here. A couple of blocks around, you can't evade him. There you are, the reading is over, we're all going to a big party. What have you been doing? And behind him, in fact, is Lazarus. Lazarus amazes me at the party. It's in a regular mansion somewhere with a paneled library containing a grand piano and leather easy chairs in a large room with chandelier and oils, fireplace with creamy marble and andirons of pure brass, and on a table a vast punch bowl and paper cups. And all the talking and yelling of a typical late-night cocktail party. Here's Lazarus all by himself in the library, staring at an oil portrait of a girl of 14, asking elegant queers at his side, "Who is she? Where is she? Can I meet her?" Beautiful scene shift from the bar to this party in a mansion with the chandelier and oils, fireplace with creamy marble, paneled library. And in all the talking and yelling of a typical late-night cocktail party, here's Lazarus all by himself in the library, staring at an oil portrait of a girl of 14, asking elegant queers at his side, "Who is she? Where is she? Can I meet her?" Meanwhile, Raphael slouches on the couch and shouts out a reading of his own poems, Buddha fish, etc., which he has in his coat. I jump from Yvette to David to another girl back to Yvette. In fact, finally, Penny shows up again, escorted by the painter Levesque, and the party gets noisier. I even chat a while with the poet Randall, exchanging views about New York. I end up upending the punch bowl into my cup, a tremendous task. Lazarus amazes me also, the cool way he's passed through the whole night. You turn around and he's got a drink in his hand and smiling, but he's not drunk and not saying a word. The dialogue of such parties is always one vast hubbub that rises to the ceiling and seems to clash and thunder there. The effect when you close your eyes and listen is wash, wash, crash, as everybody is trying to emphasize their conversation at the risk of interruption or drown out. Finally, it gets louder, the drinks keep coming, the hors d'oeuvres are destroyed, and the punch is slaked in by hungry talking tongues. Finally, it degenerates into a shout fest, and always the host begins to worry about the neighbors, and his last hour is spent in politely closing up the party. There are always late, loud stragglers, i.e. us. The last partiers are always gently pushed out. As in my case, I go to the punch bowl to dump it in my cup, but the host's best friend gently removes the bowl from my hand, saying, "It's empty, besides the party's over." The last horrible scene shows the bohemian cramming his pockets with free cigarettes that have been generously left in open boxes made of teak wood. It's Levesque, the painter, who does that, with an evil leer. A penniless painter, a crazy man. All his hair shaved off to a bare minimum, fuzz and pucks and bruises all over him where he got drunk and fell down the night before. Yet the best painter in San Francisco. The hosts nod and assure us out to the garden path, and we all go. The hosts nod and assure us out to the garden path, and we all go shouting away in a drunken singing gang consisting of Raphael, me, Irwin, Simon, Lazarus, David D'Angeli, and Levesque the painter. The night's only begun. We all sit on a curbstone, and Raphael collapses, sitting cross-legged in the road facing us, and begins talking and gesturing in the air, those hands. Some of us are sitting cross-legged. It's a long speech he makes, which has drunken triumph in it. It's a long speech he makes, which has drunken triumph in it. We're all drunk, but it's also got that bird pure triumph of Raphael's anyway. But here come the cops and pull up in a cruiser. I get up and say, "Let's go, we're making too much noise." And everybody's following me, but the cops walk in on us and want to know who we are. "We just came from that big party over there." "Well, you've been making too much noise. We got 3 calls from the neighbors." "We're leaving," I say, and start off. And besides, now the cops dig the big bearded Irwin Abraham and the suave gentlemanly David and the crazy dignified painter, and then they see Lazarus and Simon, and they decide it would be too much in the station house, which it surely would have been. I want to instruct my bhikkhus to avoid the authorities. It's written in the Tao. It's the only way. It's the only straight line right through. Now we own the world. We buy wine on Market Street and jump all 8 in buses and drink in the back and get off and go shouting down the middle of streets, big long conversations. We climb a hill and go over a long path and up to a grass sidewalk top overlooking the lights of Frisco. We sit in the grass and drink wine, all talking. Then up to a man's pad, a house with a yard, a big hi-fi electromagnetic poobah, big phonograph, and they boom big numbers, organ masses. Levesque, the painter, falls down and thinks Simon's hit him and comes crying to tell us. I start crying because Simon hit somebody. It's all drunk and sentimental. David finally leaves, but Lazarus seen it, saw Levesque fall and hurt himself, and turns out next morning nobody hit nobody. An evening somewhat silly but filled with a triumph that was surely a drunken triumph. In the morning, Levesque comes with notebook, and I tell him, "Nobody hit you." "Well, I'm glad to hear that," he bellows. I'd once said to him, "You must be my brother that died in 1926 and was a great painter and drawer at 9. When were you born?" But now I realize it's not the same person at all. If so, karma has twisted. Levesque is earnest with big blue eyes and eager to help and very humble. But suddenly, too, he'll go mad before your eyes and do a mad dance in the street that scares me. Also, he laughs Wee! And hovers behind you. I study his notebook, sit on the porch looking at the city, spend a quiet day, sketch pictures with him. One picture I sketch of Raphael asleep. Levesque says, "Oh, that's the Raphael. Waste, all right." Then Lazarus and I dribble ghosts into his notebook with our crazy cartoon pencils. I'd like to see them again, especially Lazarus' strange wandering ghost lines, which he draws with a radiantly bemused smile. Then by God, we buy pork chops at the store. Raphael and I discuss James Dean in front of the movie rack. "What necrophilia," he yells, meaning the girls adore a dead actor, but what actor isn't? What actor is? We cook pork chops in the kitchen and it's already dark. We take a short walk up the same strange trail through a cliff grass empty lot. As we come down, again Raphael is striding through the moonlit night exactly like an opium pipe Chinaman. His hands are in his sleeves and his head is bowed, and he walks right along, real dark and strange and bent to sorrowful regards. His eyes raising and sweeping the scene, he looks lost like little Richard Barthelmess in an old picture about London opium smokers under lamps. In fact, Raphael comes right under the lamp and walks across to the other dark. Hands and sleeves, he looks moody and Sicilian. Levesque says to me, "Oh, I wish I could paint him walking like that." "Draw it first with a pencil," I say, because all day I've been drawing unsuccessfully with his ink. We come in and I go to bed in my sleeping bag, windows open to the cool stars, and I sleep with my cross. In the morning, me and Raphael and Simon walk off through the hot morning, through big cement factories and ironworks and yards. I want to walk and show them things. At first they complain, but then they get interested in the big electromagnets that lift piles of pounded scrap and dumps them into hoppers. Blam. Just by releasing the juice at the switch, the power goes off, the mass drops. I explain to them, and mass equals energy, and mass plus energy equals emptiness. "Yeah, but look at that goddamn thing," says Simon, mouth open. "It's great," yells Raphael, pounding his fist at me. We march on. We're going to see if Cody's at the railroad station. We walk right in the trainmen's lockers, and I even see if I got any mail there from 2 years before when I was a brakeman too. Then we cut out to meet Cody in the beach, the coffee joint. We take a bus the rest of the way. Raphael grabs the back seat and talks loudly. The maniac, he wants the whole bus to hear if he feels like talking. Meanwhile, Simon has a banana he just bought, and he wants to know if ours are just as big. "Bigger," says Raphael. "Bigger?" yells Simon. "That's right." Simon receives this information with complete serious consideration and reconsideration. I can see him moving his lips and counting. Sure enough, there's Cody in the road, backing the little coupe 40 miles an hour up the steep hill to swerve backwards into a slot and jump out. Door wide open, he leans out with big laughing red face, hollering a sentence to us boys in the street, and at the same time warning off impending motorists. We rush up to a beautiful girl's pad, a beautiful pad. She's got a short haircut. She's in bed under blankets. She's sick. She has big sad eyes. She has me play Sinatra louder on the phonograph. She has a whole album spinning. Yes, we can use her car. Raphael wants to move his stuff from Sonia's to the new pad of the party, where the organ music was, and Levesque cried, "Okay, Cody's car is too small, and then we'll slip to the races." "No, you can't go to the races in my car," she yells. "Okay, we'll be back." We all stand around admiring her, sit a while, even have long silences during which then she'll turn and start looking at us and finally addresses us. "What are you cats up to? Anyway," snuffing. "Wow," she says. "Relax. I mean it, you know. Like, you know?" Yeah, we all agree, but we can't all get in at the same time, so off we go to the races, but Raphael's moving takes up all our time, and finally Cody begins to see we'll be late for the first race again. "I'll miss the Daily Double again," he cries frantically, showing his mouth open and his teeth. He really means it. Raphael is fishing all his socks and things, and Sonia is saying, "Listen, I don't want all them old biddies to know about my life. I'm living, see?" "That's great," I say, and to myself, a completely serious little girl seriously in love. She's got a new boyfriend already, and that's what she means. Simon and I lift big albums of records and books and bring them down to the car where Cody is sulking. "Hey, Cody," I say, Come up and see the pretty girl. He doesn't want to. Finally, I say, we need your muscles to carry that stuff. Then he does come, but when we're all settled and back in the car ready to go, and Raphael says, phew, that's that. Cody says, humph, muscles.